moment while they get the jurors in. Y'all can go ahead and bring the jurors, I left something.
Okay. Let's all rise for the jury, please. Watch those swinging chairs right there. Go. Come all the way. Careful with those swinging chairs. You will grab a seat. Stand for you all. Watch those swinging chairs in the back. Be seated, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's good to see you again. It's been a while, I know. Good for us, not for you, but regardless. Yeah, it's always good to tell the truth, isn't it? But regardless, we're in this together, and it is good to see you again. I want to thank you for being prompt and courteous this morning. I think it might be good for us to introduce ourselves to you again. I'm Mary Staley Clark. I'm the judge who's from Cobb County, who's been assigned to preside over the trial of the state of Georgia versus Justin Ross Harris. I read to you the bill of indictment, and we are in the process of jury selection and ready to begin questioning of you all. And I would like for first the state and then the defense to introduce themselves again.
Good morning. Again, Chuck Boring with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Jesse Evans, also with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office.
And Susan Treadaway, also with the Cobb County DA's office.
And for the defense.
Hey, good morning. I'm Maddox. This is Brian Lumpkin.
Morning.
And Carlos Rodriguez.
Good morning.
And of course, we represent Ross. Good morning.
We're going to go into more questioning. The parties are going to question you. Now, they can ask you about personal experiences you or people that you know may have had, or things that you may be aware of, just generally, sort of experiences or opinions or thoughts related to this particular case. And they can ask you about work and family background, possible emotional reaction to the subject matter of the case, things of that nature, things that relate to you as an individual and to this case, and your ability to serve on this case in a fair and impartial manner. That's the way the question will be. It's very broad in range, but it focuses again on you as an individual and your ability to serve on this case in a fair and impartial manner. You're under oath, so you are obligated to be as truthful and candid as possible. It's better to give too much information than not enough. Human communication is an interesting thing, and it may be that I'm speaking to you and I just think I'm as clear as all get out, and you're looking at me and thinking, what does all get out mean? Or something along that. So if we use expressions, words, we're lawyers, we very often can lapse into legal talk. It's important that you feel comfortable enough, and I want you to say, what do you mean by that? That's just a perfectly fine question. What do you mean by that? What are you looking for? What information do you want? I've never heard that before. What does it mean? And all I have to do is read the newspaper today, and I'm gonna find at least 10 words I've never heard before. So that's very common. Also, speaking as to your oath, you have to answer truthfully every question we ask you. Having said that, it may be that some of the questions come up that you consider to be personal or private. This is what you need to do. You need to, if it's a hand-raising situation or a one-on-one situation, you need to say, yes, I have an answer to that, but I consider it to be personal. And we will create as private an environment as possible for you to be able to answer that. So I want to arm you with that, so you'll feel comfortable to know that if we get into areas that you think, no, that's a little bit personal to me, Well, you say that. That's a little bit personal to me. And then we'll move as carefully as we can to be as respectful of that as we can. And finally, I'm going to turn it over to first the state and then the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's been a few days. So, just so y'all know how this is going to go from the state standpoint, and then I guess a little bit procedurally. You guys were in here a few days ago. We talked about some things general in nature. I got you to all raise your hand, things like that. So we're going to follow up on some of those questions I asked and get a little more detail. I know some of you may have had questions like, does this apply to me or not? We'll get to kind of flesh that out now. Also, after I ask you individual questions, the defense will get up here and ask you individual questions as well. There were a couple of issues that you raised your hand for the other day that we're actually going to take up in private. So some of you will end up taking these issues up in private anyway. But generally what we're going to be talking about now, I'm going to start off asking you all some questions about your employment, your background, things like that, and then talk about some of your answers, okay? So obviously we're going to start with you, Juror 25. How are you this morning?
Fine.
Okay, so you work over at Sea Island. How long have you worked over there?
17 years.
Okay, and you are semi-retired, I think you said. What type of work did you do before you were working on Sea Island?
Same thing.
Same thing, just different area?
Yeah.
Okay, and have you always worked in that type of profession, that job?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, and you live in the downtown area, correct?
Yeah.
Now, you stated, like, getting into those questions about people you know, things like that. I believe you stated that you knew somebody in the court system here in Brunswick.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and where do they work? What part of the court system?
I really don't know. He works for a law firm and.
Okay. And do you know, is this law firm do criminal work, civil work, or do you know what type of work they do?
I think it's probably civil.
Okay. Okay. I believe you said you know somebody or have family that's been in the military?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
It was my husband.
Okay, all right. And what branch was he in?
Well, he was in Vietnam.
Okay, all right, all right. You also said that you knew somebody who's been involved in the medical field or something like that, or works or has some training in the medical field, like nurse, doctor, or something like that.
She works at hospital.
And what does she do there?
She's in CNA.
Okay. Now you also, I know we'll get to it in a little bit. You don't use computers too much or anything, but you said you know somebody who works in IT or computer technology or something like that. Who is that, and what do they do?
She's a retired teacher. She's in homeschool on the computer.
All right. Now you were also on the questionnaire. You were asked a question about whether you served on a jury, and I asked y'all generally, have you ever served on a jury or a grand jury? You've served on a jury before, correct? Now, was that a grand jury or a jury like this?
Like this, I've just been involved.
Okay. Was it, and with a grand jury, what you do is you come in and you hear cases and you present indictments. And you do a bunch of cases in a day and they come through. And then something like this, like a trial jury, you come in and you hear one case. Is that what you
That's
did?
what it was.
Okay. Was that here in Glenn County?
Yes.
Okay. Was it, you've just done it one time? All right. How long ago was that? About? You don't have to give me an exact date.
Oh, gosh, that's been almost 15 years ago.
And do you remember, was it a criminal case or a civil case? What was it about, if you remember? Was it about somebody committing a crime, or was it about somebody getting sued for a car wreck? Or if you remember, what do you remember about it?
I remember we couldn't come to a decision, that's all.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. And we've had several people that have had jury service throughout this process who talked about it, and some, they've had that same answer. And then the follow-up to that is it something where the case got worked out before y'all deliberated, or was it something that back in the jury room y'all got it and you just couldn't agree?
We was in that jury room and he couldn't get to.
Okay. And was this something where y'all were close to getting to agreement, or it was something where there were basically two sides fighting, or?
We discussed it and then we came to a conclusion
Okay,
We were all in agreement,
okay,
majority.
okay, but you had some people who weren't, so you didn't end up rendering a verdict. Okay. And you don't remember if it was like, what it was about, correct? Or do you remember what the whole argument was, not back in the jury room, but the case, like what were the witnesses testifying about?
No, my mind is not so good on remembering everything.
All right, okay. 15 years, I don't remember I'm trying to think back now, what was I doing 15 years ago? Kind of remember where I was living, but I mean, I understand, that's been a while, okay. You go to church here? Okay, and what church do you go to?
Revival Center Church of Jesus Christ.
We had one jury yesterday describe it as he was an Easter and Christmas attendee, or are you a pretty regular attendee at the church?
Been there 30 years,
You go almost every Sunday?
every Sunday.
Every Sunday. All right. Thank you. All right. We ask a bunch of questions about technology and stuff like that, and you say you don't use computers yet. Okay. You did say you have a phone, like a cell phone, but it doesn't have like internet access or anything like that.
It has network on it, but it's just one of those old ones like me.
Uh huh. Do you ever get on it or try to get on the internet on it or anything?
I don't.
Okay. All right, and you don't text message either, right?
I get it, but I don't do it.
You get it and then you look at it and you just whatever. We have a coworker who's like that. He'll get text messages. As soon as I text him, he calls me. He's like, "Hey, what do you want?" And I'm like, "All right." So, people are laughing because they probably know who it is. But you don't use Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff, do you? Do you even know? Have you ever looked at that stuff with somebody else using it, like on their Facebook page? I believe you stated that you've had the opportunity before to care for somebody who is either disabled or sick or something like that. Tell me a little about that.
My sister, she's younger than I am. Well, she was younger than I.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to be put in the nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
She had a heart, like an 82-year-old lady.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she died in 4 years ago.
Mm.
I cared. When I came from work, I stopped and sit with
Mhm.
her. And before then, I used to go to the house and try to do what I can for her.
Right.
And she had to be put in the nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
That's when she died, in the nursing home.
I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. Because it takes a lot to actually do your own job and to have to take care of a loved one who's sick and things like that, I'm sure.
My husband is deceased, so
Mhm.
and that was my only sister, so it wasn't very.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to hear that. We'll shift gears a little bit from that. Do you have any hobbies, things you like to do in your free time? If you have any?
I like to cook.
Okay. All right. And what's your main thing that you cook? What are you noted for? It's already early. I'm starting to get hungry for lunch, but
I do cakes and
Okay.
pudding, casseroles, whatever.
all right. All right. I asked you some questions about experiences with law enforcement. I think you said you had a good experience and a bad experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and start with the bad one and get that out of the way. Tell me about that. What bad experience do you remember having with law enforcement?
Well, my husband was arrested. He had a bike prior to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to get a lawyer to defend him.
Okay.
The lawyer did not do what he needed to do. And so the man that I know that works in the law firm,
Mm-hmm.
he was judge, and they brought him over to his office, and that's where he was released. But the money, the other lawyer kept.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Now,
And my son, well, he moved out from home and he lived with these boys, and they were all arrested out of
Mhm.
the home that they were living in because of drugs. And
yeah, you got a bunch of people in a house, and then everybody goes to jail because they found drugs.
and
Yeah.
he stayed there for a while because they didn't have money to get him out.
Right.
But the Lord blessed him because the boys finally came up and confronted that they doing.
Right.
And so he was released.
Okay. And when you talked about you'd stated that you'd known somebody who's been falsely accused of something. Is that what you were talking about with your son, or is it something different?
That was my son.
Okay, all right. But in the end, it worked out good. He didn't go to trial or anything. His friends actually came to his aid later. Okay. And your husband, was that some type of the arrest? Was it just some type of like domestic thing?
And child support.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right. Now you said you've had a good experience with law enforcement too. Tell me about that.
Well, this is, we know how traffic tickets and.
Yes, ma'am.
Some policemen don't have courtesy.
Yes, I understand.
It was my birthday, and we were sailing home to get home to eat dinner. And, my son tried to tell him that this was my mother's birthday.
Right.
It didn't make a difference to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was on my way to church one night, and I picked up my rider, we were sailing.
And by sailing, you mean going pretty fast?
Well, not, we were trying hard to get to church.
Okay.
So, this, policeman came out of nowhere,
Mhm.
we pulled on the side of the road, and so he got out, and he said, ma'am, do you know you're in a 35 mile, speeding limit, and
Mhm.
you went over 40? And so he let us go, he gave us a courtesy warning, and he told me to pray for him at church.
Oh. Well, that was nice. Well, you know, that's a good thing to be prayed for out in the field. So, I think you said you've also known somebody who's been treated unfair by the court system or something like that. Was that what you talking about your son?
My son had, he had open heart surgery.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
He's been waiting quite a long time. They told him he could not work anymore.
Okay.
And he's been waiting for quite a long time for this surgery. He's got the time in because they told him that he had, did well on his earnings.
Right.
But, it's like, he's had a hearing about 3 or 4 times.
So-
And I think it's unfair because
Mhm.
it's the health, he has
Mhm.
blood thinner and all kinds of medicine that he has to
Right.
use, and I have to help him a lot, and so it would be a blessing for him to
Mhm.
release it. I
Yeah.
have to wait.
So he's kind of unfortunately
But I think
caught
it's
up
so
in the system.
unfair,
Yeah.
yes.
No. Sorry to hear that too. Hopefully that'll work itself out sooner rather than later. You'd also said you know somebody who's been arrested for a crime. You're talking about what we've already talked about. Nothing else other than that, right?
Well, I have a brother-in-law,
Okay.
who's incarcerated.
Mhm.
My sister's, ex-husband, I don't know if he's still in jail or not.
Okay. And just generally, what was he charged with, if you remember?
They said he molested a child.
Okay. And do you even know enough about it to have an opinion as to whether he was treated fairly or anything like that?
To me, he was always good to my sister.
Yeah. Okay.
And when they divorced, it broke my heart.
Oh, yeah.
He had attended church and
Mhm.
everything. It just kind of hard for me to, because he was always so nice and,
Mhm.
but I don't know, things happen.
Mhm. You agree? Sometimes people give off an appearance of being like good on the outside on one side, and then you find out later they're completely different. Okay. All right. Now, have you been a witness in a case before? Had to testify? I think I had that you'd actually had to be a witness in a case before or come into court. Okay. I may, and that's why I'm asking the questions. I may have written it down wrong, or I may have seen somebody's hand up and I put you down or something like that. So,
But then on jury duty, but,
not okay. All right. Have you ever had to file a police report or make a police report, like an accident or a break-in or anything like that?
yeah.
Okay. Tell me about that.
When I first, moved to Brunswick, we had like French under the doors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, someone broke into my house and
I'm sorry to hear that. Did they ever find who had done it, or did you ever get your stuff back?
well, thankfully they didn't take anything. I didn't really have anything that
Yes, ma'am. They were looking for something, and it wasn't. They got in there, and it wasn't what.
Now, unless the Lord just moved my way, and so
Yes, ma'am. Okay. I believe you said that unfortunately you've known somebody who suffered the sudden death of a child.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little about that, if that's okay.
My niece,
Mhm.
her, baby died from crib death.
Okay.
It left a bit of it, she's had other children since then.
Okay. And I think one of the last things I'm going to ask you here is that you stated, I think the defense had asked you, have you ever suffered any like unexpected trauma or anything like that? Do you remember that question where they asked you?
There was a time when my son was arrested.
Okay, all right. Now, when you get, do you follow the news at all?
No,
Like,
not.
okay, like
There's so much
newspaper?
bad things on the news.
So you just try to stay away from it. See, you don't watch TV news
I
or.
don't watch TV at all.
All right. All right. Just have a second, Your Honor. All right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. You've got a lovely voice, but it is very soft, and so I couldn't catch quite everything, so I may ask you some of the same questions, okay? One of the last things you were talking about was your son waiting for open heart surgery,
No, I said my son had open heart surgery.
okay?
And they told him that he could not work anymore, and he's waiting on disability. And he's had several hearings, and he has the time already in, but they just have to wait a bit.
Okay, so your son is, so he's disabled, and the hearing to get his benefits have
They
just
told
drug
him
out.
He could not work anymore, and he had the surgery done in St. Vincent.
Okay. All right. From the information we got the other day, I understand you have your kids are all grown, but you have a granddaughter,
Yes.
15.
now.
All right. Does she live with you?
She spend the weekends, go to church. She's been doing that since she was a baby, so
Grandma takes her to church.
that's right.
Okay. And she's 15 and she still stays with you on the weekends. Okay. And is that your son or your daughter's child?
I have two sons, I don't have any daughters.
Two sons, okay. And do they live here in this area as well? Okay. And are you just like helping out to give them a breather on the weekends? To give your son a breather on the weekends, or
My son and his wife is divorced.
okay,
The one with the open heart surgery is the child's daddy.
all right,
And she likes being with me, and I like being with her. It's not a burden to me like
right.
my granddaughter.
Does he live with you too?
No, I don't.
Okay. And she's been coming to stay with you every weekend since she was a baby. All right.
Not every weekend, but.
Almost. Okay. All right. So when she was younger, when she was a baby, you would have been responsible then. Did you have to go pick her up and bring her to your house and take her back and if you had to go anywhere, you had to transport her as well.
That's right.
All right. Did you have a vehicle at the time and have a car seat to drive her around in? Okay. Did you
Those little carrying things for the sit-up?
Right.
Got grown to sit up at that.
the kind that had like a basket with a base that stayed in the car and then you just took it in and out? Okay. Did you have your own for your vehicle or did you borrow the one that your son had?
I had my own vehicle.
You had the carrier.
Oh, I had my own carrier.
Had your own carrier, okay. How did you decide what carrier to get? Did you go pick it out at the store?
Well, I thought it was the best one.
You thought it was the best one because you wanted,
I could afford it anyway.
okay. Cost and safety. All right, so now that she's 15, she's old enough to get a learner's permit. You gonna let her, you gonna teach her how to drive? No?
I taught my sons
And that was enough?
yeah.
Okay. They can teach her how to drive. All right. All right. I want to follow up, make sure I understand what you were telling us about your husband was arrested for a child support issue. I'm assuming this was years ago. All right. But I didn't catch what it was exactly you were telling us. You said the lawyer didn't do what he was supposed to do.
He didn't know, Lord forgive me, but he was a lawyer, but I thought he didn't know nothing.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of those out there.
So, I was working at the time with this lawyer, and I told him about the situation, and so he knew it, one of his friends was a judge, and, they didn't just let him out because of their position. But he talked to the judge, and the judge had my husband come from the jailhouse to his office, and, they had a hearing in there, and some of it was lies, but anyhow, he was released. And that's the first time I seen him in with the things on his arm and something on his feet, and it kind of does something to you to see.
Sure.
him.
It hurts your heart to see it.
Yeah. But anyhow, like I said, they released him, and that was the only time.
All right. How long was he in jail?
About a week.
Just a week? All right. So you hired one lawyer. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. And then the lawyer who you were working for at the time, he was able to make a phone call to the judge and go ahead and get the hearing expedited.
He had the hearing in his office,
Okay.
and the mother to the children, one of them was not really his child, but because he married her in pregnant way, he had his last name. And, she didn't show up for the hearing, just the lawyer that represented her. And, they told a lot of lies.
The lawyer told a lot of lies.
Well, she told him a lot of lies.
Okay.
About the situation. But he had to pay the child support, and he paid it till he was 21 years old.
Right. All right. So, and you were at this hearing.
Yeah.
All right. But the woman didn't show up. Okay. But it's your understanding that some of the things that the lawyer was telling the judge were false, that the woman had told us some things that weren't true.
That's right.
Okay. And that stuck with you all these years.
I have no bitterness or anything, but I remember.
Yeah.
Some things I remember, some I don't.
Because that's the only time you had to go through anything like that. All right. And then you told us about your son being arrested. And was that the only time when he was arrested with a bunch of guys in the house? Yeah.
Yes.
How long ago was that?
Yeah,
Well, was it more than 10 years ago?
it was way past 10 years.
Okay,
ago, before
all right.
his daughter was born.
All right.
He was just almost a teenager.
I'm just going to write
Decided to
down.
move out, so.
All right. And so what happened was he was living in a house with a bunch of guys. Apparently, there were some drugs, and everybody in the house got arrested.
That's
All
right.
right. How long did he have to stay in jail?
He stayed there about a month.
Okay.
I didn't have money to get him out, and the boys, finally, told the truth and said he had no knowledge of what they were doing, and he was released.
Okay. do you know by any chance, did he ever tell the police officer or anybody that, hey, I'm not guilty? This isn't mine?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. But regardless, he stayed in jail a month and then finally they let him go. All right.
Because of those boys told the judge that he didn't have any knowledge of what they were doing. He was a chef on Jacob.
Okay. And then, I love the story, you getting stopped on the way to church. Do you have a heavy foot often on the way to church? Does that happen sometimes?
Well, sometimes when you're talking, you don't realize just how fast you're going.
Yeah.
And, the person that I pick up for church does not live next door to me. I have to go all the way across town and pick her up and take her to church. So,
All right. And I wrote down Revival Church of Jesus Christ. Did I get the whole name of the church?
Revival Center.
Revival.
Revival Center Church of Jesus Christ.
All right. And that's here in Brunswick?
341.
Okay. Okay. To that. One question that we asked you about was whether or not you had ever observed or dealt with a person who appeared to be in shock as a result of a sudden trauma or tragic event. Do you remember answering yes to that question the other day? Whether you'd ever dealt with a person who appeared to be in shock as a result of a sudden trauma or tragic event?
My niece, died in the hospital. And, there's several things that, but she died in the hospital, last year. It was kinda hard. It was a lot of family members coming in because they had said that she would not live. And, my niece came in and, she had said a lot of, horrible things. And then my brother died, in the hospital in February of this year, and, they couldn't stop the bleeding. He had, his, rectal bleeding, and, the same thing happened again, with the same daughter, and, I don't know if you would say it was shock, but it does something to you.
Yeah.
And, you're just there to help, and they blame you for this and that, and it's not so. You're just trying to do what you know is best to help. And, it was kinda hard, but we made it through it.
The family's been through some very heavy life experiences lately, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. We asked a question if there was gonna be, if anyone thought they would be unable to serve as a juror if there was gonna be graphic sexual language used, and I believe you raised your hand for that.
I did.
Do you think that, you're gonna be able to sit as?
Judge, I'm gonna check at this time. I think this is an issue we've been taking up, individually sequestered. I think it needs to be handled that way.
Do you mind doing that, Mr. Gilbert?
No, not at all, Judge, I don't mind. We can do that. Thank you, ma'am.
Juror 26, how are you? All right, I'm gonna ask you to speak up a little bit so it'll help so the defense doesn't have to ask you the same questions that I ask you, okay?
Okay, I'll try.
That's good. I think we can all hear. You don't have a microphone like me, but you're projecting well, so just don't try to.
I had laryngitis this morning, so to get us out, I don't, I'll try to.
Okay, well, just don't blow out your neighbor's eardrums over there, okay? All right. So as far as your work history, you are retired from finance,
Yes.
okay? And how long did you work in the field of finance?
Well, I worked for a finance company for 20 years. Prior to that, I did some bookkeeping for individuals.
Okay. And so, your whole professional career has it been doing that type of work?
Yeah.
Okay. And your husband's retired. He was self-employed. He owned a convenience store.
Right.
Okay. Was it like a chain convenience store or like a family-owned? I guess.
It was
Yeah.
independent. I did the books for the man that owned it.
Okay.
Like in the late 70s, and he wanted to sell it, and he had all sorts of people wanting to buy it, but
Mhm.
for some reason, this man just attached himself to me. He was like 70-something, and he just liked me.
Uh huh.
And so he let my husband buy it, so we bought it. And he turned around and leased it to his brother because we didn't have the money to really
Run it.
we financed it. But when it was paid for, he retired, and I was still working, but we leased it to somebody else, and after 7 years, they quit paying, so we took it back. And so after we took it back and I'd been retired, I had to go back and be the bookkeeper and do all the taxes and just about run the store with him.
Wow.
We finally sold it 2 years ago.
Oh wow. What was it here in Brunswick?
Yeah, it's theirs, but it's just, it's not a chain, it's just an individual.
Okay. And did he ever do any? What other type of work did he do during his career before he retired? Was it mainly doing that?
That, and at one point he worked at one that had a Bay Area, and he did a lot of automotive repairs. He
Okay.
did that.
I gotcha. All right. Now, let's see. We asked several questions about prior experience, knowing people they're trained or worked in different jobs, and whether you know certain people and things like that. One of the first questions I think we asked was whether you knew anybody who was a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney. And I believe you stated that you know somebody who's a defense attorney.
I did, but it's not here. This was
Okay.
in South Carolina,
Okay.
where I grew up. I still know people there. There's nobody locally.
Okay. And what part of South Carolina?
I grew up in Anderson.
Okay. And I believe you stated that you've had jobs before where you've supervised other people.
Yes, when I worked for the finance company, part of the time I worked, I was the manager. And I hired people.
Okay. Did you ever fire anybody? Did that have to go higher up if you wanted to fire?
It had to go higher up.
Okay.
I recommended it, but it had to go higher up.
Yeah. But sometimes you may recommend it, but it doesn't happen, right? Okay. You've known somebody who's been in the military before, either a family member, friend, something like that?
My sister's husband was in the military, and he served in Vietnam.
Okay.
I was in high school, but I was really close with him.
Okay. Did he survive Vietnam?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they've been married 53 years now, so
Wow.
he's like a brother to me after all those years.
I can imagine. So I take it this was your older sister, correct?
Yeah, she's up there.
And do they live around here?
No, they live in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay. Now, you also have known somebody or known family or friends who've worked in the medical field, either nurse, doctor, or something like
I
that.
have a brother who's a neurosurgeon.
Is that here in Brunswick or back in South Carolina?
He lives in South Carolina.
Okay. Okay. I believe you also stated that you've known somebody who has worked in Child Protective Services or DFACS or something like that. Okay, who would that be to you?
The just a real good friend of mine who goes to church with me and lives in my neighborhood.
Okay. And does he or she, they work for DFAX?
She did.
She did, okay.
She doesn't now, but she did.
And that's a perfect segue. Next question is church. You said you do attend a church here in town.
Yeah.
What church do you attend?
First Presbyterian,
You've been going there a long time?
39 years.
Okay. I'd say that's a pretty steady.
Well, I was
Steady.
Methodist, but my husband was Presbyterian, and we got married, and I just became a Presbyterian.
Okay. All right, kind of get into some of those questions about, we ask about technology and things like that. I think you actually use texting
Yeah, a little bit.
a little bit, okay.
I mean, I didn't, but all my grandchildren have convinced me that I need to.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's a certain line of demarcation or a certain age now these days where people don't talk on the phone anymore. It's just texting, right?
Right.
Okay. I'll tell you, I've kind of got, unfortunately, I guess, dealing with people all day, I've gone to the way of maybe texting, and so I'll look at a phone call and not answer it and then text back because I just don't feel like talking.
I'd rather
It's
call,
sad.
But they like to text, so.
Yeah. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's kind of how society's taken us. It really is. It kind of has dehumanized us, I think, to a degree. Do you, as far as texting, do you use any other kind of messaging on phones, like messaging services?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Now, as far as, I think we call it, like, we talk about social media, about Facebook and Instagram and things like that. Do you ever use that stuff?
The only thing I do is Facebook. I don't ever post on it, but I just sometimes look at it.
Okay. And when you look at it, what do you look at it for? Like to keep up with family, look at news, or something different?
Mostly to keep up with family, because they put things on there.
See pictures of all the kids and stuff like that? You did, I think you told us that as far as TV and stuff like that, you do like to watch legal TV shows, some of them either fiction or nonfiction?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what you like to. It's kind of funny because we all sit here and hear from different jurors, and we always get different types of shows. Yesterday we heard Swamp Murders. Have y'all ever heard of Swamp Murders? I see a couple heads nodding back there. We Cobb County people, we didn't know what the heck that was. Well, do you watch Swamp Murders?
No.
Okay. All right, tell me what type of shows do you like to watch?
I watch Law and Order and all the Chicago series, Chicago
Mhm.
Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med.
Right.
I was watching Criminal Minds, but it's gotten to be too deep.
Too hokey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I watch sometimes the First 48,
Mm-hmm.
some of the other channels like that.
Well, I can tell you, I don't watch many of those shows because you get home from work and it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to watch the Braves or the Falcons or football or something, and not listen to that stuff. So, have you watched that type of stuff for a long time, or is this something new you've just started? Okay. Do you ever watch any legal talk shows like Nancy Grace or anything like that?
I've watched Nancy Grace.
I think you said that you may have read a book or two about a murder case, either a fictional story or a true story. Okay, tell me about those. What types of books have you read?
Well, I read a lot of fiction.
Okay.
You know, John Grisham and Steve Berry, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of them are like legal and political, and some of them are murders.
Mhm.
I've read a lot of Anne Rose true stories.
Okay. I think you stated that you've also, kind of in that same type of category, you've actually followed a real trial before, been interested in a trial that was actually going on, either gone to a courthouse and watched, or watched it on TV, or followed it in the news or something.
Yeah, I watched O.J.
Uh-huh.
And there was one in Florida that I watched a lot of, Casey
Anthony?
Anthony.
Yeah. All right. Now, you stated you've had a good experience with law enforcement before. Okay, tell me about that.
Well, about 6 years ago, my husband woke me up at midnight and said he had to go to the hospital, and I drove him, and he had a kidney stone.
Oh, man.
And so we were there till 4:30, and then he was better, so we drove back home, and as soon as we walked in, I realized we'd been burglarized.
Oh, no.
Somebody had come in the side window.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately, we didn't touch anything, and he called the police. And so we went back outside to wait for him, and the policeman came. And I said, boy, that was quick. And he said, no, I live in this neighborhood, and I heard the call. I don't have the call, but he said, I come over here.
Mhm.
And he said, I have a feeling I might know who did this, and I'm gonna do some riding around. And he was really nice, and he stayed there till the detectives got there.
Okay.
But, he just, you know, they were just really nice when they handled the situation.
Were y'all able to ever find out who did it or get your stuff back?
No, they never found out anything. I didn't get anything back.
Okay, sorry to hear about that.
You know, it was really, I mean, things are replaceable, but I had stock certificates that weren't.
Oh, gosh.
And I had to pay a lot of money for a surety bond to get new ones, and
Right.
I didn't have coverage for that, so that was the worst part.
Is that when you talked about answering the question about whether you filed a police report, was that what you were talking about or something different?
Yeah, we filed a police report. That's the only one I can remember filing. Well, we filed one for my husband's business when somebody shot me. One day one night the alarm went off and somebody just been shooting gun behind at the hotel, and one went through the window of the station and one went through one of the gas pumps.
Oh,
We
gosh.
had to file a report then.
Did you ever find out who did that?
No,
Okay. All right. You stated that also, have you testified before in like a civil case or a criminal case or something?
I have. It's mostly for a couple of cases that was in magistrate court without a jury, just hearings and for work.
Okay. And just some kind of work arguments between people, something about finances or, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you stated that you're actually familiar, you think you're familiar with the Chick-fil-A at Paces Ferry 285 and Acres Mill Shopping Center. Tell me a little bit, how are you familiar with that?
Well, my youngest son he lives in Paulding County,
Yeah.
and he's lived there for 10 years, but prior to that, he went to school in Marietta, and after that, he's lived in Cobb County, I guess, for a total of about 10 years.
Okay.
So we'd go visit, and we'd go to the Cumberland Mall and, you know, do all those places. And I've been going there for 20 years.
Okay. Okay. A couple of other questions you were asked. These, I think, a couple of these were asked by the defense. You've actually transported children to daycare before in a car.
Yeah, I took my grandchildren, just not very rarely, because they don't live here. But
Right.
when I visited, I may have had to.
Okay. And when you visit, did you take like the car seat that would?
I used them. Normally, if we would go visit and we had to do it, they just took my car and left me theirs with the car seats.
Okay. And do you remember where they would put the car seat, like in the passenger side, in the middle, or behind them?
It would be in the back. Let's see, most of the time right behind the drivers where they had it. Well, one son had 3 kids, so.
Oh, wow.
We had one on each side and a booster in the middle.
Wow. So everybody's in there. Right?
Yeah.
And what type of car do they have? Like a minivan or something?
Yeah,
Doesn't it?
they did.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you didn't routinely drive them, but you would drive them places, take them to daycare on occasion.
Well, often we would go and stay with the ones, the one that has 3 he lived in Singapore, so we couldn't really,
Oh, yeah.
but when they moved back to Texas, sometimes we would go and let them they'd go off. He likes to go on marathons, and they'd go
Oh,
all
gosh.
from Chicago, and
Mhm.
we'd stay with the kids, and we would have to drive. But by the time we had to drive all 3, one of them was already out of the car seat, but the other 2, one was in one and one was in a booster.
And you said you've heard commercials and stuff like that about looking again to make sure you don't leave a pet or a child in the car. Is that just where have you heard? Like on the radio or TV, or do you remember specifically?
On both, I've heard them on the radio and TV.
Okay. And is that something recently, or you've heard it for years?
Well, I think it's more recent,
Mhm.
especially a lot of it about pets.
Mm-hmm. All right. I don't have anything else. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. You had a son that went to school in Marietta?
Yes,
Did he go to Southern Tech?
yes.
Okay. You know that
It's not Southern Tech.
it's not Southern Tech anymore.
Now, Kennesaw
exactly. My understanding is that the students at Kennesaw were thrilled about it, but the students at Southern Tech, not so much.
Yeah.
So, what period of time was he up there going to school?
He went to Southern Tech from 91 to 96. He was in a 5-year program. And then he continued to live in Marietta for about 3, and then they bought a house in Kennesaw. And he finally moved to Paulding County, 10 years ago.
How long did he live in Kennesaw?
I guess about 4 years.
Okay, so was he on one of those 5-year work programs where he would like
He was
work
an
at?
architect. He's an architect, and it just took 5 years. That's
Okay.
For some reason, that's how long it took.
What is the name of the company that he works for now?
He works for, Knight Architect.
When he was at Southern Tech and you would come stay in the 90s, where would y'all stay? Somewhere there close to campus?
Yeah, we usually stayed at I think it was a Hampton Inn right there off the interstate.
Do you remember if it was the Franklin Road area?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Okay. And that is just up the highway from where we're talking about the Cumberland Mall area.
Right.
Right, so you're familiar with Interstate 75, and of course it's changed since the 90s, but where you would get off to go down to go to Cumberland Mall.
Right.
Okay. And then he moved to Kennesaw for 4 years. And would you continue to visit when he lived up there?
Yes.
All right. Now, there's a mall up there called Town Center.
Yeah, we would go there a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you probably went to the Cumberland area a little bit less
Right.
because you go to Town Center.
Mhm.
All right. Now he lives in Paulding County,
Right.
and you still obviously go visit. Where do you stay when you do you stay with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay with him.
Do you still use that 75, 285 area? Do you still travel that area when you visit him?
Not too much anymore.
Okay.
All we do when we go is go to soccer games and lacrosse games.
Right. There for the grandkids.
Yeah.
Okay. So during these times over the years, I mean, obviously you've been visiting that area for a long, long time. Would you drive or would your husband drive?
Before we would get to the Atlanta busy part, he drove.
Okay.
I didn't like to drive in it.
All right. So you mean once you got into the heavy traffic part, you made him drive? Yeah. Okay. Y'all ever get stuck in the backups on 75 or 285?
Every time.
Yeah.
I hate to go there.
You imagine having to get up and drive to work in that traffic every
My,
morning.
my son takes an hour and sometimes longer to get home.
Does he come down, if he lives in Paulding, does he have to come down Whitlock, Dallas Highway to get home?
He goes 75 and he works where 75 and 85 come.
Right. Oh, he works down at it all merges together?
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
boy. You probably don't go visit him at work then when you're, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the legal shows, and you apparently watch a lot of shows that are law-ish related, some fiction, some true crime, but you also listen to some of the, or watch some of the sort of talk shows. Now, the only one that's been mentioned is the Nancy Grace Show. Do you watch any other legal talk shows
No,
or talking head shows?
no, every now and then I might just be flipping through the channels, but I can't remember exactly what we may have watched.
Okay. Well, what is it about that show that you like? Or why would you tune in to watch that?
I just find her interesting. I think she just says what she really thinks.
Do you find that you often agree with her?
Yes.
And sometimes she has guests on there that try to give different opinions. Do you ever agree with those different opinions if they're different from hers?
Sometimes, but I usually just listen to her.
Okay. All right. You indicated that you heard some public service announcements. Were those on television or radio?
I've heard them on both.
Both? Okay. And I think you answered that you had heard public service announcements, both warning about not leaving or forgetting a child in a car, as well as those that warning not to leave or forget an animal in a car.
Right.
Okay. Is there a certain, do you hear those primarily during the summer?
Yes.
Okay. And have you heard them recently, or have you heard them for a number of years?
Probably, I would say in the last 10 years.
Okay. Have you ever been, because you've indicated that y'all are using the interstates, have you ever seen the signs that the DOT has up that says, remember to check your car for children?
Yes.
You've seen those?
Mhm.
And I believe you'd indicated that you had heard accounts or stories of people who had left or forgotten children in their cars. Yeah. And is that something you have just heard recently or over a period of years?
I think there's been a lot more of it in the last 5 years or so.
Certainly a lot more that you hear about on TV, right? And you've never followed up any of those stories and looked anything up on the internet or done any research into why that's happening or why these stories are being published?
No, I've never followed up. I'm not sure why they publish them. I guess it's just, everything nowadays is, they publish it.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, to bring awareness to people.
Okay. I think you've touched on, or Mr. Boring has asked you about everything else that I wanted to ask you about this morning, so thank you.
It's easy since we're going numerical order. Good morning, 27. Would you like some? I don't mind. You got any extra cups over here? administration coming through. So you're not gonna get a ton, but it's gonna be very cold. It's all that's left of the ice. You're welcome. Okay, so juror 27. You kind of know the drill now by how we're going to do this. You are a draftsman. Okay, tell me a little about that.
I work for an architect.
Okay. All right. And as far as the architecture, is this buildings, things like that? Okay. And during your professional career, have you always worked in that field? Okay. All right. Your wife works as a nurse, correct? What type of nurse? It's like ER, general practitioner?
This is an RN and pediatrics.
Okay. And does she work in a hospital or? Okay.
Here in Brooklyn.
So does she spend time in the ER sometimes with doing pediatrics or have to deal with emergency injuries to children? Okay. So she deals more with the common day pediatrician type of issues?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
She's not allowed to talk about her work, so I really don't know what she.
Well, HIPAA, got to protect the privacy of the client. Maybe she's just using it as an excuse not to have to talk to you. Right. All right. In asking you those questions, we asked you about whether you knew people, things like that. I believe you stated that you know a criminal defense attorney.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that like a local attorney? And who's that?
Bobby Baker,
Okay. And how do you know him? Are y'all friends?
he's represented me,
Okay. All right.
DUI.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and let y'all know, we have to run a criminal history on everybody. So, you know, we know everything that's out there. So it's just something, we've had these juror roles lately. They've changed our systems. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, people who aren't qualified actually make it to the jury list. But that's none of y'all, so don't worry, we're not going to be getting into that. So I'll just ask you a couple questions on that topic. On these issues you've had, have they been in Glenn County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you believe you've been treated fairly on all of these occasions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right, and thanks for volunteering that. I didn't know we were going to go there, but we ended up there, so. All right, you said you know some people in the court system as well, or the courthouse or something like that?
My first cousin was a clerk of court in the next county, Bradley County,
Okay.
for 16.
And you also know some folks who've worked in law enforcement?
Oh, yes, my niece's husband is something.
Okay. Something, he does something with law enforcement?
Yeah, he's I'm not sure, police. he's a policeman.
Okay. And is that around here or somewhere else?
In Glenn County.
In Glenn County, okay. The Glenn County PD or Glenn County Sheriff's Office? You don't know? Okay. All right. You also know, have had some people you've known or family that have been in the military?
My dad was in the Navy and my brother-in-law was in the Army.
Okay. Okay. And as far as knowing somebody that works in the medical field, obviously your wife. Anybody else? Or is that what you were thinking of when you raised your hand? I believe you stated that you use your cell phone to text, correct?
Yes,
Okay. How often do you text regularly?
yes.
Now, sometimes you have different types of applications on cell phones that you can message almost like a text. Do you use those too, like Facebook Messenger, or I think some other ones are called like WhatsApp, or?
I've used Messenger, but mainly just text.
Yeah. And as far as social media, like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff, do you use any of those things?
we're just talking about something you said. You didn't do anything, attack anybody or anything like that.
No.
Okay. All right. And you said the handcuffs were a little tight.
It was, it was like a tie strap deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they really kept your wrist. I asked him, pleaded with him, please loosen it up, change it or something.
Okay. All right. So you were trying to explain to him that it was too tight, and he didn't want to hear it. Okay. And that's the bad experience that you wanted to let us know about. Bad experience with a police officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was all my fault, looking back,
You'd have done some things differently. Yeah.
stay at home.
All right. All right, and you said you read a lot, and you like to read a lot about courtrooms and you said murder mysteries. What's do you know what the last book you read was?
Stephen King,
End of Watch.
no, the title was a date,
Oh, 11/23/60.
3,
Yeah,
I think.
that was pretty great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a Hulu's done a series, like a series of that book. I think it's Hulu.
I don't know.
You read Michael Connelly,
No.
the Mickey Holler series? No? All right. All right, so you told us that you had heard accounts or stories of child left or forgotten in a car other than this case. Do you remember what you heard?
Well, I'm not sure the answer to that one, but it seems like there was a case where the lady, she might have even been in the car, driving in Daytona Beach, drove her car into the ocean with the kids still in the car seat.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, that's why we're following up. If you think you have information about the topic that we're asking about, then we'll follow up, and if it's what we're talking about, fine.
It might not apply.
Okay. Let's see. Cover that. I think you answered the question that you had a family member, close friend that had an affair. Who was that? Or is that somebody you can tell us about?
Well, yeah, it's, my sister-in-law. Yeah,
Sister-in-law?
yeah.
She was married to your brother?
She's married to my first wife.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
She was my first wife's sister.
First wife's sister. Okay. You know, I think I'll stop it there then. Thank you.
Let's take a morning recess.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep an open mind, you've got to discuss this matter with each other. Let's take 2 minutes for you all to have a morning recess. Have a little break.
All rise for the jury, please.
How are you? Good to see you.
New flavor.
Good to see you. Thank you for that. Ready to talk about this juror?
Yes, Judge.
What says the state?
The state has no problem excusing her. I doubt very, 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 very seriously we'll get to her. And if we do, it would be well after the dates of her vacation.
What do you say?
We don't object.
She can be excused. Tell her we said vote by out. All right, let's bring jurors.
Wow. Let's all rise to the word, please. Walk your step. Go.
Yeah, you have to be careful in the courtroom. One time I fell out of my chair. It was
Please be seated.
They had real long hair, and I fell out of the chair, and they said it was almost black hair that came flying. So that obviously was a while back, but that happened to me. All righty, I think we're ready to go.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, Juror 28. So, I'm looking at the name of your company and what you do. You own your own company, correct?
Yes, I do.
How long have you worked in that particular field?
42 years.
So I take it that's your entire professional career?
Yes.
All right, and your wife is a retired teacher?
Yes.
Where did she teach?
Satilla Marsh Elementary, special education.
And I believe you said now she's working in the home taking care of your 14-month-old grandchild?
That's correct.
All right, a couple of the questions that we ask you about relationships and things like that. I believe you stated that you know a criminal defense attorney?
No, several.
Okay, tell me about that. Like, are they all local or?
Yeah, when I was in college, I worked for a law firm in town
Okay,
and did abstract work, searching real estate titles and stuff.
okay,
So I know a bunch of the older attorneys in New Orleans, not so much.
okay. So this is from, I guess years ago, back in their law firm, back when you were younger.
In the late 70s.
Okay. Anything about what you learned working for those attorneys that would in any way impact your ability to be fair to both sides in this case?
Not really there, no.
Okay. Is there somewhere where it would?
I went to John Marshall Law School.
Okay. So when you talked about legal training and stuff like that,
That's it.
all right. So was that the campus up in Atlanta?
No, actually, they had a branch here in Brunswick.
Okay. I knew that I think they're building one in Savannah too, or they have built
They
one.
had one for years in Savannah, and when federal law first came to town here,
Mm-hmm.
federal law requested they put a branch here so they could train some people for out there.
Yes, sir.
And I was fortunate enough to help fill out that class.
Oh, wow, great. Have you ever practiced as an
No.
attorney? Okay. Well, congratulations. Yeah, you were smart. Have you ever thought about going back into it and doing law?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Don't have a stomach for it.
Yes, sir. When you went to law school, did you have any particular interest, like what you wanted to go for, any particular type of practice?
Not really. At that time, I didn't.
Okay. Now, if you were selected as a juror, I mean, everybody comes into this with their own experiences and things like that. If you were selected as a juror, would you, how long ago was it that you went to law school?
Late 70s.
Okay. What you learned back then, if you took criminal law classes or anything like that, would you substitute your opinion about the law from that in regard to what is brought out in court and what the judge instruction?
It's hard not to remember things you've learned before.
Okay. I guess what I'll ask you then, if you were selected as a juror, would you agree to follow the law that the judges instruct you on and the evidence in the courtroom?
I would, but it'd be hard to, like I say, just, not remember what you need.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to reserve to follow up on that anymore. We're going to talk about several other of the answers in private anyway. So, all right. Thank you. You stated that, well, obviously you supervise people. You own your own business.
Yep.
How many people do you supervise at your business?
Currently 2,
Okay. And obviously you have the ability to hire and fire.
absolutely,
And you probably had to do both over the years.
in the last week.
Sorry to hear that. Or congratulations.
But,
Yes. All right. You know people who work in law enforcement?
sure.
Okay, tell me about that.
Went to school and played ball with the ex-sheriff here in town.
Okay?
Got a really good friend that was with GBI. He's now one of the chief directors at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
Okay.
Of course, I know several other people that have been in law enforcement over the years. I had a neighbor who was a police officer. I've been here all my life, so I know a lot of people.
Yes, sir. And you also being down here, you know a lot of people who've been in the military before.
Sure.
Okay.
My
Tell me-
father was in the National Guard. My father-in-law was in the Air Force in Korea.
Mhm.
Are two of the closest ones.
Okay.
Family.
So we already talked about your knowledge of people or somebody that has legal training, you.
Yep.
You know somebody who, or people or family members who work in the medical field or have worked in the medical field?
Got a daughter-in-law who works at the hospital. She works in the ER, OR, and outpatient surgery areas.
And what's her job?
She's an RN.
Okay. You also said you know somebody that's either trained or studied criminology?
Well, I referred that back to law school.
Okay, all right, some aspects of criminal law and things like that.
My good friend that's out of federal law, and of course, he's been an instructor
Yeah,
in federal law, and he works in that field.
you also know somebody who either has or in the past or currently works for Child Protective Services or DFACS?
No, not that works for DFACS.
Okay.
My wife being a teacher dealt with defects.
Ah, okay, I got you. And also, I believe you know somebody who works in the IT field or in computers and programming and things?
Yes, my son has a friend who's an IT guy that worked part-time for us a couple years ago.
Okay,
He now lives in Atlanta. I've got a tenant that rents from me in the building that I own, that's next door to this computer guy.
all right. Having been in Glenn County, I'm gonna bet this was probably in Glenn County. You've served on a jury before?
Several times.
Okay, how many times?
I've been on 2 criminal cases.
Okay. Let's talk about the first one, about how long ago was the oldest one?
The oldest one was probably 15 years ago.
And what type of case was it?
It was a case where a guy was arrested for having drugs in his house.
And without telling me the verdict, were you able to reach a verdict?
Absolutely.
Okay. And were you the foreperson?
No.
All right. Second case.
Second case was about 2 guys that pimped out this girl and put her up in a motel, and she
Mhm.
cashed in her motel room and bought drugs from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And they abducted her and held her against her will and that kind of thing.
I got you. And how long ago was that one, just approximately?
Probably 8 or 9 years ago.
Without telling me what your verdict was, were you able to reach a verdict?
Yes, we did.
I take it you've been on a civil case before too?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I've been parties to civil cases.
Okay. Well, have you ever been a juror on one or?
I haven't been a juror on a civil case.
Okay. Civil case you've been a party to, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You are, you go to a church or attend a church or belong to a?
First Baptist Church of Brunswick.
All right. Now, talk a little bit about technology and stuff. I believe you use text messaging on your phone, correct?
Every day.
And you have a smartphone?
Yes.
I guess as a business person, it's kind of attached to you now, isn't
I
it?
got an iPhone 6.
All right. So, do you use any of those other cell phone messaging apps that are like texting, like Facebook Messenger, that type of stuff?
I don't use Facebook Messenger, but we do use sometimes Skype.
Yeah.
We also use iMessaging
Mm-hmm.
through Apple,
Yes.
but that's about it.
Okay. Now, how about Facebook and social media and all that stuff?
All right, I have a personal Facebook account, and I look to see pictures of my grandchildren.
Yeah.
We also have a Facebook account for our business, where we post pictures of jobs and that kind of stuff.
All right.
I do use Facebook in my business. Some of the nationwide, there's Facebook groups that deal in our industry.
Yes, sir.
So different people post things that they run into in our industry, or different problems, or different solutions, that kind of stuff. And I look at it every day.
Great. And the Craigslist, you use Craigslist as well?
Yes.
And what do you use that for?
Buy and sell things.
Kind of going on, not just the social media stuff, but the media. What, are you a big news follower or things like
Yes.
that? Okay. And where do you usually get your news? Internet, TV, radio?
All the above.
What is your, I guess, what is your main source? What do you look to the most? Do you look on the internet, like on your phone, or?
Main source is probably TV and internet.
Okay. And do you prefer national or local?
I
Or do
work
you-
both.
Okay. Now, you answered that you watch some kind of legal TV shows and things like that. Tell me about that. Like,
I watch CSI, Law and Orders, all that kind of stuff.
obviously you figured out this ain't gonna take an hour, right? And with CSI, do you, I guess, let's see how to put this. Some people, I guess, think that you can really do all that stuff they do on TV.
No, you can't.
Okay. It's very frustrating sometimes when people expect, like, oh, you can go do this and that. I'm like, that's not the real world.
No.
Do you watch any legal talk shows, anything like that?
I try not to,
Okay. They annoying?
yes.
All right, I believe you stated that you've also either read or listened to or watched some kind of docudrama or something about criminal cases or a
Well, I
criminal issue.
followed OJ and
Mhm.
Casey Anthony and the Menendez brothers and all that kind of stuff. Seen documentaries on Manson and that kind of stuff. That's a variety of things.
You also, you've known somebody who's been arrested for something. I think we'd
Yes.
all have to raise our hand in here, but okay, tell me about that.
I had a nephew that was arrested, he and a friend of his were riding around, and his friend decided he needed to pick up some 204s off the job site.
Mm-hmm.
He got
Weren't
arrested
his.
for that.
Right.
My cousin that's in the banking business, and he got arrested and prosecuted for, when the bank failed, they prosecuted him for failure to bank.
I got you. And do you have any opinion about how those cases were handled? Were you close enough to it to know, to have an opinion as to whether they were treated fairly or not?
I don't have anything.
Now, getting back to, I think you talked about being a party to some type of civil suit.
Yes.
You stated that, I think you've been a witness before in like a
Yes.
civil proceed. Okay, tell me a little about that. Like how many times? Probably more than
The
one.
only time I've really been a witness, we were
Okay.
in a case where we had been sued by a customer that had rented a piece of equipment.
Okay.
And our insurance company at first hired an attorney to defend us, and then they hired an attorney to get them out of the case.
Okay.
So we ended up in court fighting our insurance company over whether or not we had coverage.
Okay.
And I had to testify in that case.
All right. I believe you stated that you've had to file a police report before, or at least give a statement to the police.
Yes, we had a burglary at our home. We also had break into our commercial business.
Did you answer the question? I think there was something about a child abuse investigation, like you've known somebody who's been either investigated or you know somebody who's had to report that?
Well, my nephew was removed from his mother's custody and placed in my mom and dad's custody because of child neglect.
Okay.
And they dealt with defects on that.
Okay. Did he end up okay, the child?
Yeah, he ended up living with my mom and dad the rest of his life.
Okay. And you've transported kids to daycare before?
Yeah, almost
Obviously.
every day for a while, and then of course I get grandkids now.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about that is you're a grandfather, so you can, at the end of the day, be like, all right, actually, with y'all with a 14-month-old in the house, it's,
Yeah, and she lives directly across the street too, so we see. her.
wow, yeah. All right. Just give me a second, sir.
Sure.
That's all I have to, thanks, sir.
Hey, good morning. Follow up first on your business. You indicated that your business is window treatments.
Yes, we sell blinds and shutters.
How'd you get into that?
Kind of through evolution. We started out as a paint wall curtain store and added window treatments in 1980 as an additional component to the business when we were trying to be a full-service decorating center. And over the years, we weeded out everything else and we got left with blinds and shutters.
Okay. So do you have to travel much?
Fair amount.
Out of state or just in the region?
I do go out of state every now and then, but most of the time it's local.
Okay. You've got, if I understand correctly, the way that, see, the way you answered this was, your wife's retired and takes care of your 14-month-old granddaughter.
Correct.
Right. But she doesn't live with y'all, she lives across the street.
She lives across the street.
Okay. Right, and you indicated that you do a lot of transporting her to daycare?
Well, not her to daycare. I mean, not daycare. We do a lot of transporting with her.
Okay.
Going places and all. And of course, I got two other grandchildren that we end up taking to school and daycare sometimes also. Don't live, next door to us, across the street.
Okay, is that part of your regular routine
No,
in the morning?
not those two, no.
Okay.
I mean, we transport them, my wife transports them on a regular basis, just because she keeps them every now and then.
Right,
But I don't transport them on a regular basis because I only really see them on the weekends or in the afternoons, that kind of stuff. Now, we do have car seats in our car all the time. All three of them have car seats in the car.
okay.
So, I mean, I'm familiar with transporting kids and them going to sleep and the whole 9 yards.
You both you and your wife keep car seats in your car?
We keep car seats in my wife's car. I drive a pickup truck.
Okay, all right.
I don't have car seats in my pickup truck.
right, so when y'all got them on the weekend, it's probably easier just to take her car whenever y'all go over there.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so neither you or your wife then are in a position of having any kind of routine where y'all are transporting a child in a car seat on a regular basis?
Well, my wife transports my granddaughter all the time. I mean, almost every day. They're going somewhere, doing something, that she's got the young in the car. Now, I don't, but she does.
To the store, dry cleaners, or to visit friends,
Wherever
or
she wants
park,
to
or
go.
beach, or
Grocery
wherever?
store, shopping, to visit her parents, my parents, whatever they're doing that day.
But it's not the same place every day.
No.
And does she have your grandchild during the day because her parents both work?
Yes.
All right, you went to John Marshall here in town in the 70s. Have you ever been a member of the state bar?
No.
All right, so you mentioned that it's hard not to remember what you do from what you may have learned in school.
Correct.
So you would have learned about obviously basic criminal procedure and rights. You would know about cross-examination.
Sure.
And you know that we would have a chance to question any witnesses that the state may bring,
Sure.
such as police officers, right?
I would assume anybody.
And so you've indicated to us that you've got a good friend in the GBI, and you know a lot of people in law enforcement.
Yes.
Certainly from living in the area and growing up in this area, whatnot. Do you think that it would be difficult for you to sit through a trial where law enforcement officers were going to be cross-examined and they were going to be asked very tough questions? You think that would be difficult for you?
I don't think that'd be difficult, no.
Okay. Would you understand and expect that that was part of everybody's job, all lawyers' job, is
Sure.
to cross-examine witnesses?
Yes.
All right, and the case that you testified in, that's really pretty interesting, actually. The insurance company just up and decided that you didn't have coverage. So you had to hire counsel to go up basically after your own insurance company.
Correct.
I hope you changed insurance companies.
Absolutely.
But was that, the matter that was contested, was it strictly like the language of a contract, or were there
The-
factual disputes?
It boiled down to the fact that we told our agent locally that there was an occurrence. The agent told us until we got suit papers or anything ever came up that we were okay. I routinely kept them informed of what the situation was. 2 days before the statute of limitations ran out, the sheriff's office and started the suit papers. 10 minutes later, I was in the agent's office, delivered the suit papers to the agent. He said, "Don't worry about it, you're covered." The insurance agency claimed because we didn't notify them in writing that we were not covered. We had not properly gave them notification and opportunity for them to defend the suit. When we went to court, a jury found that, and they admitted under oath that the way most of the claim for process were that people told their agent, and their agent processed whatever paperwork needed to be done. Well, the jury found that we did have coverage and we were covered.
The agent.
Yes.
Did he verify your version of the
Yes.
events?
Yes.
So there wasn't any
There was no-
factual
There
dispute?
was no factual dispute.
And the two family members that you've mentioned who had some run-ins, one for theft and one for bank failure, you basically, you know them as through familial relationships, but you didn't follow those cases or have anything to do with those
No,
matters?
I did not.
Okay. Are you still in contact or friendly with these family members?
One of them I have pretty regular contact with, the other I don't see on a regular basis.
Okay.
He has since moved out of the area.
All right, you told us that you had either read or heard news accounts of stories of a child left in a car other than this case.
Yes.
Do you remember what it was that you were thinking of or what you heard when you answered that question?
Just all the reports, there seemed to be a rash of them in the last 3 or 4 years where people left kids in cars and they died. And I've seen news reports, of course, on TV, and I've seen articles on the internet.
And you said you become aware of it the last few years,
Yes,
or you've seen reports the last few years.
yes. That's when I really noticed it in the last few years. Of course, after I've had grandchildren and they've been in the car with me, I've been a lot more aware of that kind of stuff.
Do you have any kind of particular thing that you do as a reminder to remind you that you got the kids in the back?
I look every time I get out of the car. If I'm in a car with a car seat, I look whether they're there or not. It's just something I do.
It's become habit for you?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. Did you do it with your own children when they were growing up?
Didn't have car seats back then.
Okay.
I mean, the restraint was your right arm. They'd sit in the
Yeah.
seat beside you when you came to stop. You take the right arm.
I can remember on long trips, we would lay in the back window of the car.
Yep.
That was and it was a lot of fun. I'm sure it was ridiculously dangerous, but that's how it was. But now that you've got grandchildren and you're responsible, you have developed for yourself a routine of you getting out of the car and you're looking in the back seat. And you're
Absolutely.
doing it every single time.
Every single time.
You've trained yourself, so you're telling us you don't have to put a reminder back there. You don't have to put your shoe back there or your phone or anything like that.
No,
Does your wife do the same thing?
I can't answer for her.
Okay. Have y'all had to talk about it?
No, but I know she looks for them. I mean, she cares for them all the time.
Okay.
But we have not had that particular discussion.
Yeah. I'm curious, did you pick up this, routine or did you pick up this habit, because you started hearing these stories on TV or
Yes.
reading in the news?
Yes, sir.
Were you familiar with the campaign out of the governor's office, the Look Again campaign?
I mean, I've heard the announcements on TV and radio.
Okay.
And like I say, I've noticed them more recently because of the grandchildren.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I didn't really pay much attention.
If they were reported, you didn't stop and read it or take note of it? All right, the only other question that you had answered that I did want to ask you about was, we asked if you knew any family or friends who'd had an affair, and you indicated that you would fall into that category. Is that somebody you can tell us about?
Yeah, one of my best friends named Don, and
I'm so sorry, somebody coughed right when you said that. You're one of your best friends?
The name Don, you want his last name?
No. No. And is this something that was recent,
About 8 years ago.
8 years ago? All right. And he was married at the time and had an affair with somebody else?
Yes.
Okay. Was he telling you about it while it was going on?
No, he didn't tell me nothing.
Okay, all right. Are you still in contact with him? Are y'all still friendly?
Every day.
Okay. Is he a coworker?
No.
Thank you.
Good morning, almost afternoon, you're 29. Doing well, how about yourself? All right, you entertained yet? Not really? Yeah. All right. I can tell the enthusiasm shines through. All right, well, let's get to it. So, you're an RN, how long have you been working in that field?
39 years.
Okay. You've been at your current job 6 months, correct?
Correct.
All right, and so, do you specialize in any particular type, like a pediatric or emergency room medicine or anything like that? I'm sorry?
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
Public health.
Public health, okay. And how about before that?
I started off in peds,
Uh-huh.
ICU, CCU, dialysis, med-surg. Should I continue?
I think we get,
Let's put in everything except OBGYN.
okay, I got you. All right. So I guess during the years you've had the opportunity to come into, and to deal with cases involving traumatic injuries to children.
Yes,
And your wife is a respiratory therapist, correct?
correct.
Dealing with dental medication?
Dental, sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea, okay. All right. Okay, so I assume you've been doing that, what you're doing your whole professional career?
I was a mason for 10 years before I was a nurse.
Okay. All right. Going back to talking about a little bit of, your knowledge about friends, family that worked in certain fields. I believe you've known somebody who's been in the military before.
Correct, my son,
And what branch was he in?
Army.
Thank him for his service. How long, is he still in the Army?
No, he made it to the last week of boot camp and then they booted him.
Well, thanks for his limited service. All right. And aside from yourself, you must know a ton of people in the medical field. So, is there anything else that sticks out other than you've worked in it your whole life that of note that we need to know? You would think. I wouldn't think so. But,
So
okay.
I could be here for a couple hours if you need.
I don't think anyone here would appreciate that, especially your fellow jurors. You might have a mutiny on your hands, so you better watch behind you. So, all right. You have obviously you're licensed with your job. Okay. And you attend a church or a religious group here in Glenn County?
My son is a guitarist.
Okay.
And he plays in local churches, so wherever he plays, that's where my wife and I are.
Okay.
Usually,
Is he any? Go ahead. Sorry.
unless she's out of town.
All right. And is he in a particular church right now, or does he just go to different ones?
He goes to different ones.
Okay. All right. Now you, as far as technology, you use a flip phone, right?
I do.
All right. Do you have internet capability on it?
I do not.
Okay. Have you ever used a cell phone that has internet capability? Or you kind
I
of.
have not.
Okay.
That's the only type of phone my wife and I could afford.
I understand. Yeah, those bills get kind of expensive when you get internet service and.
Especially her phone,
Oh yeah.
because she's on it constantly, so.
All right. Do you use the internet much? Social media, things like that?
Just, when I initially turn the computer on, the homepage shows us news.
Okay. And so, do you follow the news much?
every day.
Okay. And do you,
Except for the past week.
very good. Ah, sharp one, nice, all right. The judge is very impressed, I'm sure. So, when you follow the news, do you get most of your news from TV, radio, or other? All of it, okay. Okay. As far as like social media like Facebook and YouTube and things like that, do you use that very often?
Facebook, just when my wife travels, so
Okay.
I know she got to where she was supposed to be.
Okay. I believe you stated you're familiar with Craigslist? You used it
Yeah.
before?
No,
And haven't you just know what it is?
I just know what it is.
And this may be from your profession, but you've had the opportunity to take care of somebody who's been sick or disabled or something like that before?
Correct.
Okay. Is that anything other than just what you've done through your profession?
Just through profession.
I believe you also stated you volunteered with children in the past?
I have, I was a rec coordinator up in New York State for 7 years, 8 years.
Are you originally from New York?
I'm originally an hour south of the military academy,
Okay.
hour north of New York City.
Yes, sir. And obviously with children, you have 4 children and then you have, what, 3 grandchildren and then a baby? Oh, 5? Okay. I know you have 3 kids, you get okay, tell me, you get 3 grandkids, a baby granddaughter, and tell me what you got.
3-year-old identical twins.
Ah, that's what it was. That accounts for it.
7-year-old these are all boys.
Right.
4-year-old grandson and the 2-week-old granddaughter.
Wow. And do they all live nearby?
No,
Okay.
just the identical twins and the 7-year-old.
Okay.
The other 3 are in Virginia.
All right. So obviously you've transported children to daycare and things like that before.
Correct.
And during your free time, if you have any, what do you like to do?
Grandchildren.
All right.
They take up their time. In fact, they're gonna be at my house in 6 hours, so.
All right. Well, I'm done for now, so we'll see what we can do. Thanks, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, or good morning, I guess, still.
How are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. All right, I was trying to write as fast as I could. You have 3-year-old twin grandsons.
Identical twins, correct. A 7-year-old grandson,
7-year-old grandson.
another 4-year-old grandson, and a 2-week-old granddaughter. Yes.
Those are all the ones you could remember.
Yes.
All right, and you had how many children?
3.
Okay.
2 daughters, and the youngest is a son. Ages?
No, they're all grown, right?
Correct.
Okay. And all these grandkids, do they all live in this area or close by?
Just the identical twin and the 7-year-old live in Brunswick.
Okay. All right. And so the 4-year-old and 2-week-old granddaughter,
Is in Virginia.
you have to visit in Virginia, right?
Correct.
How often do you get up there?
We just came back. I had to come back for jury duty.
What about work? Do you have to come back for work?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
All right. All right, so when we're talking about those grandchildren that you have to transport on any kind of regular basis, we're really talking about the twins and the 7-year-old.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so the 3-year-olds, the twins, they still are they in a booster seat by now?
They are.
Okay. Do y'all keep booster seats in your car?
We do.
Right, when they were a little bit younger last year or whatnot, were y'all keeping full-blown car seats in?
Correct.
Okay. Both you and your wife? Okay, so y'all got a bunch of car seats?
We did.
Yeah,
We sold them all.
okay. And, if you had twins, then, you were in a situation where, wow, that's a lot of car seats, where you had, I guess, 2 in the back of her car and then 2 in the back of your car, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Booster seat in the middle of them.
Okay, booster seat for the now 7-year-old.
Correct.
And, all right, so you said that they are coming here at the end of the day today. Is that because they oftentimes spend the weekend with y'all?
Correct.
And I would assume that's the time of the week that y'all care for them the most, see them the most, and transport them the most?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay,
It's up to their discretion.
up to the grandchildren's discretion?
Yeah.
All right. If
I
they,
know that sounds weird, but
if they wanna see, y'all, they let it be known, and
no, they do.
they get to make the call.
They do.
Okay. Are you and your wife, either one, in the, have a routine of taking them to daycare in the morning?
No.
Do you occasionally fill in that role Monday through Friday and take them to daycare?
We do.
Okay. Would that be a once a week or once a month sort of fill in?
I'd have to say once a month.
Okay. It's occasional. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. And what about picking them up? Or do y'all ever have the responsibility to pick them up from the daycare and bring them back to either your house or their parents' house?
With the twins, it's mostly picking them up at their parents' house.
Okay.
The 7-year-old, we sometimes pick him up at school or bring him to school.
Okay.
So it varies from week to week. So I can't be any more specific than that.
And do both parents of the twins work?
Yes.
All right. So is it fair to say that if they're both working, then that one of the parents has to take them each morning? Somebody's got to take them to daycare.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know which parent it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends really on what time my daughter-in-law has to be in the morning.
Okay. Whatever their routine is, that's their routine. You don't need to know about it.
Correct.
Fair to say? Okay.
When they call us, then we try to,
You're there.
that's what grandparents are all about.
Exactly. My parents moved 2 blocks away from my house. Originally, that was a little daunting, the thought of it, but we very quickly learned it was a wonderful thing to have grandparents 2 blocks away.
Mhm.
All right. All right, you two had indicated that you had read news accounts or stories, or heard news accounts or stories of a child left in a car, other than this case.
Correct.
Is there anyone in particular, or just generally you've heard about? Okay, and is this something that you've heard on the radio, or just showed up in the newspaper or on your internet feed?
Correct.
Okay. Nothing in particular that grabbed your attention and you ran with the story? How long have you, when is the first time you can remember hearing a story about this happening?
This happening.
Mm-hmm.
this
Child being
case-
left in a car?
Probably the first case I heard about was probably 30 years ago.
Okay. All right. Are you hearing about it more often now?
Yes.
And again, same kind of sources, just radio, news, internet, TV
Correct.
news? Okay.
30 years ago, there were no computers. It was just TV and radio. So
Right.
showing my age. Sorry.
Yeah, my daughter can't believe when I went to college, you didn't have your own computer. And she just can't imagine, so she's had one since she was 8, that we could go to college and not have computers.
Term papers, you use a typewriter.
Exactly. All right. And you indicated that you'd also heard public service announcements regarding either, I think you said you heard public service announcements regarding not, don't forget to get your animals out of your car.
Yeah.
Don't leave an animal in your car. All right. When and where have you heard those?
I just heard that this summer, so.
During the summer? Okay. Is it something you hear regularly during the summer, or was this the first time you noticed it?
That was the first time I
Okay.
noticed it.
Is that something on the radio?
That was on the Weather Channel.
Okay. All right, we also asked those who had children or grandchildren that fell into the category of children who fell asleep when put in the car, put in a car seat. You raised your hand. I take it one or both of the twins fall asleep when you put them in the car?
Sometimes,
Okay. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
correct?
Okay. And you indicated you knew someone, family or close friend who had an affair.
Correct.
Is that somebody you can tell us about?
Nephew,
I can't hear you.
nephew,
Okay. Is this recent?
yes.
Okay. And is this something that he talked to you about, told you about
No,
it? And is this someone who you're close to?
no.
Okay. I think we're gonna have some follow-up later for you in private, but that's all I've got for right now. Thank you.
Juror 30. Don't look too excited. All right. You are a second grade teacher? Retired second grade teacher, okay. And for your entire professional career, did you teach? Was that basically your job throughout?
No, I was a fitness instructor,
After
after school hours.
school hours?
After school hours.
And your husband's retired as well, U.S. Marshal and TSA?
TSA, FBI, he was with Capitol Police for a while. He was with something else at Flushing, I don't remember that.
Okay. So I'm just gonna guess that you guys originally lived somewhere else and moved here because he came to Flushing?
No, I've been in here when he was a marshal.
Okay.
in the Brunswick office before he went to Flushing.
Okay. All right. Okay. And now that you're retired, and I know you have grandkids as well, but what do you do in your spare time or hobbies? What are your hobbies?
I love to read, cook, and work out.
Okay. It's kind of kept that whole fitness instructor type thing. All right. You talked about some things that or connections you have with other people in certain fields. I believe you said that you know somebody in the court system or somebody that works in the court system.
I have a friend, she's a lawyer and her husband is a judge here.
Okay.
Just recently appointed judge.
Okay. And which judge? I don't know the judges here, but
Baker,
okay.
Sam Baker.
Let's see. You obviously you know people who work in law enforcement. Is that lots? I assume most of them are they from your husband or just
They're-
different?
Well, yeah, friends of my husband that I've come
Okay.
to know over the years. Many years.
Okay. And just a quick question on that note, it's going to be asked one way or another. In a case, if you were to be selected as a juror, would you be able to sit and listen to the testimony of law enforcement and basically apply the same laws about credibility and things like that as you would to a normal person?
I could listen to it, but I have a very high respect for
Mhm.
law enforcement. I just have a great respect for them. and-
Absolutely. I guess my question is though, would you basically look at what they're saying and things like that and just use logic and reason on what the law is about doing that?
Are you saying, do I respect the law?
No. What I'm saying is,
Sorry, slow.
yeah. Would you just accept what they have to say no matter what it is? Or would you basically see if it makes sense?
It would have to make sense.
Okay. Alright. I know these sound like crazy questions, but we have to ask them a certain way sometimes for, I'll just say
But I don't think
legal
I would
issues.
doubt, I would doubt the word of the law,
Okay. We understood. Same with military. You're friends with people who are in the military and things like that. Yeah, because I assume, do you have family members or friends who are in the military?
My daughter is currently involved with an Army Ranger who
Mhm.
has a criminal law degree.
Okay. And as far as people in the legal field and things like that, are you talking about that or something else?
We
You-
have a very good friend who is the assistant director to the FBI, just recently retired in the past couple of years. My son works for the State Department, works in the American Embassy over in Paris right now,
Okay. How long has he been there?
almost 2 years.
Wow, so he was there with all the mess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good to hear he's safe. You know people in the medical field as well?
I have friends whose husbands are doctors and a few nurse friends.
I believe you stated you've also known somebody who's worked in the field of psychology or had some training experience in that field, or
Well,
psychiatry or something.
It's, when you teach school,
Yeah.
a lot of times when you have these special meetings on special children, psychologists will come in and, so I know him through that field.
Okay. And you answered the question about criminology. Were you talking about your daughter's, the Army Ranger?
He
She's.
has a degree
Mm-hmm.
in criminology.
Mm-hmm.
My husband also, that was his major.
Okay. You also stated, I believe, that you know people who work for Child Protective Services. Is that through your work with us as a school teacher? Now, you have also had the opportunity to serve on a jury.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how many juries?
One,
Okay. Was that here in Brunswick?
he's here in Brunswick.
About how long ago? We're not going to hold you to it.
77,
Okay.
1977, 78, somewhere around there.
And were you, was this a criminal case or a civil case?
Maybe that's my intelligence. It was a breaking and entering.
Okay, we're gonna call that criminal then, so breaking and entering, okay. So with that, without telling me what your verdict was, were you able to reach a verdict as a jury?
We did after two or three times deliberating.
Okay, so you go in, come out, all right. So you were able to reach a verdict. Were you actually the foreperson or not, or were you? What's that?
Are you
I'm
asking, was I against the, because I,
No, I think I trailed off foreperson. Were you the foreperson of the jury? Like the person who you were like the president of the jury?
oh,
No, okay. Somebody else got voted into that seat.
yes.
Okay.
You teach second grade for as long as I did, you become a little bit.
Okay. All right. Moving on to some of your other organizations and things you may be a part of. I believe you attend a church or another religious organization locally.
I did.
Okay, and what is that?
I am a sacristan, Eucharistic minister of the St. William's Catholic Church.
And going on to kind of social media and the news and things like that, are you a big news follower? Mediocre?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Watch a little politics.
Do you do you get most of your news from the internet, newspapers, radio, TV?
Newspaper, a little bit, what you can get out of this newspaper.
Well, I was going to ask you which, but I'm not going to follow up on that. So moving on.
Facebook I use mostly to see the children's pictures. I don't like to get into the politics at all on Facebook. I don't like to publish my,
Okay.
radio, yes.
And do you usually follow like national news, or do you keep it more local, like what's going on around here?
A little local, not so much on national.
Okay. Now, as far as the use of technology, I guess, and looking at this type of stuff and things like that, first of all, do you text message?
I do.
Okay. Do you use any other applications like Facebook Messenger or things of that nature?
Instant messenger.
And as far as, how about the other things I listed, like Instagram, YouTube? Are you involved in those things?
YouTube, just to, study.
Okay. All right. So, moving on from that, I believe you've stated that over the time, at some point in your life, you've had to take care of somebody who's been either sick or disabled or something like that?
Yes, I retired from teaching to take care of my parents. And then I helped the elderly couple that I knew many, many years ago. Her husband developed Alzheimer's, and I would go and help her out occasionally.
Yes, ma'am. Now, you've always also taken the opportunity to volunteer with children in the past. Was that as a mother, like doing stuff with your own children, or something different?
When I was working at the club, they had a children's program there, and I did that for a little while. Not often, I think I taught swimming 2 summers.
Okay. I believe you've known somebody who's been arrested for a crime before.
So I said,
You've known somebody who's been arrested for a crime before, or something like that.
yes.
Okay. Would you rather talk about it in private?
No, because actually I respect the law, and she broke the law. It was my daughter.
Okay.
DUI,
All right.
when she was in college.
And do you believe she was treated fairly?
I do, I mean, that's the law.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. You've also, I think you said that you've been a witness before in a case, either a civil case or a criminal case.
I had a student, parents were, the custody battle.
Yes, ma'am. And you've also had to file a police report before or give a statement to the police about something?
Yes, this past June 25th, we were in a car wreck, my husband and I, and had to make a statement.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. Everybody okay?
The car totaled, but we're okay.
Oh, well, that's most important. Not probably, that is what's most important. And you also answered the question about having to report suspicion of child abuse before. I assume that's as your job as a teacher.
Yes.
You've known somebody who has, I believe, used the internet to date before, or met somebody online that they've gotten involved with romantically or something of that nature.
Not to the internet, it was a long time ago.
Okay.
When I was working at the fitness center,
Mm-hmm.
they took
Okay.
get in shape, and then they kind of flirt around.
What's that? Oh, get in shape and then flirt
They get in
around.
shape, and then they flirt around, and yes,
Oh, I think we're talking. Are you talking about the question about do you know somebody that had an affair?
right.
Okay, I thought I was asking something different. Have you ever known anybody that's ever done online dating or met somebody on the internet that they?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Well, we've got that question covered now, so we can move that one. Yes. So, who do you know who's dated online or
My
met up with somebody?
brother-in-law met his second wife.
Your what? Your
My
brother-in-law.
After he lost it to my sister,
Okay.
he met his new wife online.
Okay. I believe you stated, or you answered a few questions about children being forgotten in cars and things like that. Do you know of stories about that, or know somebody who's done that before or something?
Just one back in around 2004, 2005.
Mm-hmm.
There was a woman who, the windows were down,
Mm-hmm.
but she left her child in the car, but it was a very warm day, and someone noticed the child and called 911 and brought the child out of the car.
Okay. And this was all the way back to 2004. Okay.
Yeah, around that time.
And this was something that you were, it was happened around where you were, or?
It happened at the school I was teaching at.
Okay. And I believe you stated you've heard commercials and things like that about, it's very dangerous to leave your kid in the car, either intentionally or negligently, accidentally, whatever? Okay. And how long have you been hearing about those things?
I just, for years, I mean,
Years.
and it's seasonally, I mean,
Right.
in the winter you bring your plants and pets in, and in the summer you
Okay.
don't leave your pets and children in the car.
Right. So I guess for years, this has been a very common understanding that this is dangerous, and you should take steps not to have that happen. Okay. I know you didn't answer anything about being really interested in legal TV shows and anything like that. You probably got enough stories from your husband about.
Yeah, he says they're all hokey, so we don't watch them.
I will agree with that. But you say you like to read. What type of stuff do you like to read when you do?
Mostly romance books.
I know nothing about that, so I can't follow up. So I think I'm done. All right. That's all the questions I have.
Hey, good morning. The incident you're telling us about that you remember from 2004, 2005, did you say that was in this area?
Yes,
Okay, and it was because it was at a school that you were teaching at the time? Okay. And you said a woman left her windows down.
I believe the story was that she went to pick up her child from daycare and came back because we had a fact TV. She left the child in the car. And someone took the child out.
Okay. All right, so if I get this wrong, correct me. Your understanding was she picked the child up from daycare, went to the school for a faculty meeting, rolled the windows down, and knowingly, intentionally left the child in the car so she could go to a meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So that case didn't have anything to do with forgetting a child then? She intentionally left the child there?
As far as I remember, that's the way that happened.
Okay. All right, and then you said that you seasonally will hear reminders on the through the media or whatnot about not leaving or forgetting a child in a car, and TV, radio, internet, anything in particular that sticks out that you've heard or where you hear these reminders?
TV or radio,
And are they public service announcements?
yes.
What about the one we mentioned about the governor's Look Again campaign? If you're familiar with that one?
And it's a little bit
You're not familiar with that?
Just
Governor's Look Again campaign?
look again in the car before you get out. No, I don't know if I remember that.
All right. But you said seasonally, so these have been these PSAs you've,
Right.
this isn't the first year you've heard them.
The first year?
It's
No,
not the first year you've heard them.
I've heard them for years.
And you have grandchildren that are 2 months and 2 years?
2 months and 2 years.
Okay. Something, right? All right. And are you ever in a position where you're transporting them in the back in a car seat?
I've transported my grandson once because they left the States.
Yeah.
So I haven't had that.
Okay. By any chance, do you know if your grandchildren, if their parents have any sort of routine reminder to look in the back or to put something in the back to remind as a fail-safe so that they won't forget the child in the car?
I don't know if they have a routine, but I know that they're conscientious people.
Okay.
Kids are noisy.
Kids of what?
They're noisy.
Oh, the noisy variety, okay.
Noisy variety.
Let's see, Mr. Boring asked you, you said you have very high respect for law enforcement, and then he asked you, you wouldn't just believe an officer no matter what they said, and you responded, no, but I wouldn't doubt the word of a law enforcement officer.
I would believe, that question's really messed me up. I believe whatever a law
any law enforcement officer, you wouldn't have to know them, just somebody who is in that line of work. You just simply believe, that they would not tell a lie.
That's just my feeling.
Okay.
They're wearing the badge.
Right. So if there were any that testified in this case, you're gonna believe them basically no matter what they say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, you're 31. Let's see. You didn't raise your hand to too much, so it shouldn't take too long. Starting off, you're a landscape architect, correct? Okay. I guess as a professional, is that what you've always done since you left college? Okay. And do you own your own business?
No.
Okay, you work for a company that does this. All right. So I believe you stated that you know somebody who prosecutes or is a prosecutor.
I believe he's the city solicitor.
Okay, here in Brunswick.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's his name?
Brian Corey. His wife, Meg Corey, I think also works under a judge. I'm not sure which one.
All right. And how do you know him?
Just friends.
From being around?
Yeah, same age. I think we were both interns here for the county when we were in college.
And what, did y'all go to school at UGA? All right. You also, in your job, you have, or either in the past or right now, you've had the opportunity to have supervisory responsibilities, correct? Tell me about that.
For certain, projects that that we've estimated and sold to clients, we have 3 different crews that are capable of doing that work. So throughout the week, I'm over any given number of those crews to, if it's my project, to oversee it.
You know some people who are a person who's in the military?
Yeah, I have a
Or
friend
who was?
Yeah, I have a friend that's in the military right now. He is a Green Beret.
All right. I believe you stated you know some people who have legal training in the legal field. Is that who we've already talked about or somebody different?
No, my best friend, roommate in college, he was in law school during the time we were roommates, and he lives here now.
Okay.
So I'm pretty acquainted with all of his friends in that whole class at UGA.
Okay. And does he, what type of law does he practice?
He doesn't practice anymore.
Okay.
He moved on to something else, but he was working for a firm. I think they just handled any kind of litigation.
Okay. And you know people who have been in the medical field? Or you know people who work in that?
Yeah, I mean, I know a few nurses around here. My dad is a pharmacist, and my
Okay.
brother is I think he's the manager of the pharmacy department at a hospital.
All right. You also attend church here in Glenn County?
Yeah, Westwood United Methodist.
Now, you're younger, so you're probably going to have a little more experience than some of the other jurors with social media and things like that. Obviously, I'm sure you text, correct? Do you use any of those other cell phone applications for messaging, like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I've used all that.
Do you use any of that stuff regularly, or do you usually text?
Yeah, I have a brother that lives out of the country, so WhatsApp
Yeah.
is a free service to text and communicate with him.
Okay. And are you on Facebook and Instagram and things like that? Okay. And what do you use it for usually? Like we've heard some business, personal, family,
I mean, just use Facebook to Facebook.
just regular. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Figure out what people are eating that day. You know,
Yeah, all the
like oh, so and so's having a taco. Great.
useless green good stuff.
Yeah. There needs to be one places to eat in Brunswick to give us some hints. That'd be nice. So if anybody wants to create that, it'd be awesome. All right. Any of the other stuff I read, we talked about, like Scout or Kick or any of those things. Are you familiar with those?
No, I don't know about that.
Okay. Now, Craigslist, how are you familiar with that?
I've sold stuff on there, I've bought stuff on there.
I believe you stated that you at some point have communicated with somebody you've never met online, either in some type of social media forum or something different like that. Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
whether it's Craigslist,
Yeah.
or, just certain stuff on Facebook, like, commenting on photos, stuff like that.
Mhm. I believe you stated you've given an online opinion before. Something like that. You've given your opinion online. Is that just like commenting on Facebook?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm sure.
okay. Anything more than that? Like, have you ever read an article in like the New York Times and responded with a comment or something like that?
No,
All right. You stated you watched some legal TV shows, both fiction and nonfiction. Tell me about that.
Law and Order, I guess.
There's about 17 of them. Which ones do you watch?
I guess the SVU one is
Right.
the most familiar one.
Mhm.
Watched that Netflix Making a Murder.
Right.
My girlfriend's always watching that show or that channel, the Discovery Channel, whatever it is.
Mhm.
There's a show in there called Snapped.
Yes, we've all heard of Snapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell her not to get any ideas from it.
That'd be a good idea. Usually somebody's dead. So, let's go back to that. When you were also ask a question about docudramas and things like that. Other than Making a Murderer, have you ever listened to podcasts or any of those documentaries, pseudo documentaries?
No.
Okay. And with Making a Murderer, did you after watching that? Did you watch the whole series? And after watching that, did you ever go seek out and like look online to try to follow up to see, how it was portrayed and whether that followed the evidence in the case or what really happened or anything of that nature?
No, I think the only thing I saw recently that I think that guy was on parole or something recent in the news that something has changed as his as far as his status of being incarcerated or not.
Okay. And after watching that, did that give you any particular, I guess, feelings or opinions about the criminal justice system? I know that was in another state, but
Yeah, I mean it was I guess more detailed than your average like TV show stuff. So just kind of more strategy on each side.
Mhm.
I guess dive deeper into the whole process.
okay. And did you get the feeling that it was a fair portrayal of what actually happened,
As far as I know.
as far as you could tell?
Mhm.
All right. I believe you have contested a ticket before.
Mhm.
Okay. And we heard a bunch of interesting stories about that yesterday. Sorry y'all weren't here for it, but tell me about what happened.
It was a parking ticket. I guess I went back to get my car and it was not there. This is downtown Athens.
Oh, yeah.
Parked on a curb that apparently was painted yellow, but it was so old that the yellow is not standing out anymore.
Right.
So I contested. I took photos that day of the curb.
So I'm sure they snatched your car up right after you left, probably.
And
They were
painted
waiting.
the curb, yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh.
so
All right.
I had pictures of it without it being painted. They, when I contested, I went to the courtroom. They had pictures of it being painted. Which
Right.
was like a week after.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, this is that day. And they said, well, yeah, okay.
All right.
But they still had to pay to get my car out of impound.
Did you sue the county?
That's not working.
It'd take more time and effort than doing that. Yeah, it's never mind. There are some interesting stories about how to get out of tickets around here yesterday, but I'll let that be. Anyway, thank you very much.
What years were you at UGA?
2004 to 2010.
Okay, and you told us that your best friend when you were at UGA was in law school at UGA. Is that right? Who is that?
His name's Clement Collins.
Clement Collins, and he lives here in town. Okay. Are y'all still roommates?
No.
All right, and you said, he doesn't practice anymore.
Correct.
He did for a while. By any chance, do you know if his practice included criminal defense at all?
I don't think that was their main focus, but I think they had a few cases here and there, whether it's helping out someone I knew or something like that, but, that definitely was not their main focus.
And he didn't represent you for your parking ticket in Athens?
No.
All right, so you've told us you watched Making a Murderer, and what I want to know is what got you to watch that show? Was it people talking about it, or did you see an advertisement for it and think, that looks interesting?
Yeah, people talking about it, and then I came home, my girlfriend wanted to watch it, so we ran through it.
All right, that was my next question. So apparently there are two categories of watchers, those that were watching it each week as it came on, and then those that power watched it through a weekend. Did you just watch the whole thing at one time? Like 8 or 10 episodes or however many it was?
Yeah, I think we did it in about a week and a half, probably.
Okay, and then same, so, to the extent you haven't already answered this, did you do any sort of independent follow-up after watching that show? Did you get online and look to see what happened after the show, to check the accuracy, or to check on any of the players? Just watched it and that was it? Okay. What organizations did you participate in at Georgia?
I was Kappa Sigma fraternity, and then within my actual college, there's a American Society of Landscape Architects.
All right, and I believe you also answered that you had heard news accounts or stories of child left in a car other than this matter.
Yeah, I couldn't detail each particular one, but I know I've heard several on the news, over the last couple of years.
Nothing comes to mind as far as when you heard it, what the circumstances were, what state it was, just you're familiar with hearing the stories?
Yeah, I think a few in Florida, but that's about as detailed as I remember.
Few in Florida, okay. And I take it it's not a subject matter which you have researched or pursued or followed up on in any way? I believe you also said that you had heard public service announcements, but I think the ones you said you heard had to do with reminding not to leave your animal in a car. Do you know when and where you would have heard those?
Heard them on the radio, seeing, all the vet offices around here have them on their billboards. But that's a yearly thing.
When it gets hot?
Right.
Do you have an animal?
Yes.
You have. So you always hear about cat people and dog people. I think that you have dog people and animal people, because it seems to me like cat people still like dogs. You ever notice that?
Yeah, I'm a dog person, I just kind of have adopted.
Yeah, dog people don't like cats, but cat people, they kind of like all animals. You notice that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to charge you for that two-bit philosophy, okay? That was a freebie. All right, we're getting close. You also answered that you had to hire an attorney, and I don't think that's something that I don't think that's something we've gone over yet.
Mm-hmm.
What was that all about?
That was the fences on my behalf.
I can't hear you.
So that was just, fences on my behalf that I needed an attorney for.
Okay. Some arrests that you had to hire an attorney to help you with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mind if I just follow up with you in a few minutes about that later on? Okay. And if you mentioned this already and I didn't catch it, I'm sorry, but I think you answered yes if you had any close friends or family who had experienced the unexpected death of a child.
Yeah, my parents had twins before me, and they died several days after birth.
Just, Judge, if I could have just one moment.
No.
All right, I think that's all I've got for you right now, Glenn. Thank you.
That's it for lunch break. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to excuse you until, let's say, 1:15. Keep an open mind and don't discuss this matter with each other or anyone else, or let anyone speak with you at all about the case. Have no contact with attorneys, parties, or witnesses to the case. Don't allow yourself in any way whatsoever to be exposed to anything. I'm being as emphatic as I can, being as all-encompassing as I can. Nothing to do with this case. Nothing electronically, nothing media-wise. If you can think of it, don't do it. That's the best way I can put it, because y'all can think of things I don't think of. So don't do anything about the case at all. And finally, I hope you have a really pleasant lunch, and we'll see you back at 1:15. You're excused.
It's all rise with the jury.
We're in recess. Everybody have a good lunch.